Another big week at Manchester United, with the club accelerating plans to name an interim head coach. But who should they appoint, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer or Michael Carrick? Our football correspondent Rob Dorset has a significant update this morning.
It's pretty clear to me now that Michael Carrick is the front-runner to take over at Manchester United as interim head coach until the end of the season. Although Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is still very much an option for United's bosses, and they have made no final decision as things stand. But it's been explained to me that Jason Wilcox, United's director of football, plans further detailed discussions with Michael Carrick and his representatives today, and there are no such meetings planned with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer right now. I think that tells you everything you need to know about where United want to go with this, but still a lot to sort out. No contractual detail has been discussed or agreed, and I think Wilcox will want to discuss with Carrick in more detail exactly who he wants alongside him in this role, who will be part of his coaching setup. I think it's looking increasingly unlikely that Solskjaer will be involved in that. But what about Darren Fletcher, who's been in the caretaker interim role for the last two matches and who doesn't know yet whether he's going back to his substantive job with Manchester United's under-18s or whether he's got a role to play in the new setup. So I think the next 24 hours will be important for Manchester United and for Michael Carrick as they try to drill down and work out exactly how his new role will work and whether they can reach an agreement. But detailed discussions today to that end, as I understand it.
So good morning to Tim Sherwood, our guest this morning. Right, Tim, do you think this is the right call by Manchester United to go for Carrick over Solskjaer?
Yeah, out of the two, I think Michael is a better choice. I think Ollie done well when he took over initially. He had a good run of games to take over, got some victories, and they finished second in the Premier League, which is a mile away from, well, a million miles away from where they are now. But it didn't end very well. You know, I remember that game away at Watford. It was quite toxic, actually, and the reception what he got from the fans. I'm not sure that would have been the right call. I think Michael's obviously done it for 3 games as an interim manager at Manchester United. He's gone away. He's worked at Middlesbrough and done a good job. He took them over in a very precarious position, and he got them looking up the leagues. I think he's level-headed. I think he's very good with the media. He looks the part. Not that should matter, but in my opinion, I think he will get the respect of the players at Manchester United. I think he carries himself very, very well, and I think it's really important. And he obviously knows the game inside out. He's got a clear knowledge of Manchester United, which seems to be the important part with this interim appointment. It'd be very interesting, whoever it was going to be, if it looks like it's Michael now, when he has the chat with Omar Barada and Jason Wilcox, surely the question would be from Michael to them is, if I do well, do I take the job on a permanent basis? Because that would be my first question to them. Or am I an interim manager and that's it till the end of the season, which is 17 games? Because they're out of everything now. You know, there's a lot of time to work with the players. So if you are a decent coach and you have got a group of players who should be all fit, because there's not an overload of games, certainly at United now, you should be able to coach the team to win enough Premier League games with the quality what they do have. I don't think they have great quality, by the way, but I don't think the Premier League is a fantastic quality at the moment. So I think it's realistic that they can challenge for the Champions League spots, whether it be 4th or 5th in the Premier League.
Because if Solskjaer had got the job, it would have been very much interim, because after what happened last time, it was very unlikely that Manchester United would have said, yes, you're doing well, we're going to give it to you full time. Yeah. Is that different for Carrick?
Well, possibly, but I think Michael will need to know that answer, and 100% he will know it. It's really difficult for the hierarchy there to give him a definitive answer, because what about if he goes and wins the 17 games? I mean, there would be a huge clamour from the Man United fans to give him the job on a permanent basis.
Like there was for Solskjaer.
Unless there was the trophy manager out there. And I said on Friday on this show, Unai Emery is the trophy manager. For me, he is the one you want to bring to your football club. But he wouldn't want to leave Aston Villa at the moment. He's running the whole shebang there. And he's doing a brilliant job of it. And it's a magnificent, huge football club, Villa, anyway. So 100% Michael will know what the job is. And I would suggest he's happy to take it for the interim period without any guarantees of any future involvement in the club.
Well, talking of the very immediate future, if he does get this role, do you know his first 2 games?
Yeah, he could have dragged it out.
He's got Man City at home on Saturday lunchtime and then Arsenal away 8 days later. They're his first 2.
Yeah, it's very, very tough. But the way I'd be looking at it if I was Michael on the positive side, if you win these 2 games, there's no reason why you can't win the next 15 after that, because the confidence of what that group would get from winning these 2 games would be astronomical. I just think it's a very difficult task for him, but you can't pick and choose when you take jobs. You know, you got a job like Manchester United comes up, you have to just go. Like, I thought it was an insult when Ruben Amorim said he didn't want to come to Man United halfway through the season. I would have said to him, if Man United are coming for you, get in your car, get on that plane and get to Manchester as soon as possible and sign that contract. That's what he did in the end, but he was kicking and screaming to be able to drag to Manchester United. He didn't want it then. He took it. He's had his pre-season now. He fouled at the club. Michael knows it. He hasn't got to settle to Manchester United. He knows exactly what it's like, because it doesn't look like it's changed too much.
We're going to bring in a Manchester United fan in a moment, but let's not forget the loss in the FA Cup at home to Brighton on the weekend. It means they're only going to play 40 games all season, which for Manchester United is pretty much unheard of. In fact, it's the lowest since the invention of the Premier League.
Yep.
All right, so I guess there's an argument to say this is going to be their worst season since 1992. There's an argument for that. But does that help Michael Carrick that there is only league games, or does he want as many games as possible if he's going to try to prove himself?
Well, what Michael's going to do is, if he knows he's an interim manager between now and the end of the season, he's going to audition for another job somewhere else. That is what he's going to do. If he's got any interest in carrying on in management, he's got a very good platform now to build on. He's got decent enough players to get to the... He's not got great players, but he's got decent enough players to qualify for Europe. And that would be deemed a success. For the Champions League, I think that would be deemed a success. It would be an okay job if he qualified for Europe in the Europa League, I feel. But they are in a good position to be able to challenge, and it does help. It helps him working if he needs to change any formations, how he wants to play, get some real directive into the players. I think 1 game a week certainly helps that. But the worst thing in the world is when you lose a game on the weekend and you've got a whole week to wait to the next one, because you can only put it out of your mind until you win. You're only as good as your last game. And at the moment, they've lost at home and got knocked out in the 3rd round. They don't often lose in the 3rd round. They lost to Grimsby in the first opening session of the Carabao Cup. Now they've lost to Brighton in the FA Cup. It's a disastrous season for Manchester United. Something has to change. And I think it's a very good time for Michael to go in there, because it's broke. It's broke and it needs fixing. So it's a real great opportunity for Michael to put himself back on the managerial map.
Yeah, and can he fix broken Manchester United at the moment? Let's speak to Manchester United fan Usman Akhtar now. Good morning to you, Usman. So Carrick's the front runner. Are you happy with that?
I mean, as happy as I could be. Obviously, I was just listening to what Tim said regarding Michael Carrick, and I'll probably echo his sentiment. I think between the 2 people, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and Michael Carrick, I would say Carrick is probably the better option in terms of what he's got under his belt and the pedigree that he brings to Manchester United. I think from between the 2 of them, I think it was the right choice.
Yeah, it was. Why would you say Carrick over Solskjaer? We're actually doing a poll at the moment, by the way, where 54% are saying Carrick, 46% are saying Solskjaer, which seems like, for our viewers anyway, it's quite even. Why does Carrick edge it in your mind?
Well, the honest truth is, I've kind of flip-flopped on this opinion, if I'm honest. I personally want to Solskjaer back because I felt like, he has the capability of galvanising the players, similar to what he did previously. But it's becoming extremely apparent that these players need their handhold, and I think Michael Carrick probably has the capabilities of doing that more than Solskjaer. I was more of a man manager, but I think Carrick is more astute tactically, and I think he'd probably bring that to the table, which obviously, as we've seen from previous predecessors, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer doesn't have that in his sort of repertoire, and I think from that perspective, Carrick is the right appointment.
I think the way it ended at United for Ole, I think he's tarnished him a little bit. There's a lot of players still there, and they still remember. And I described him as a rabbit in the headlights at the end of his tenure there. I just think that the players remember that. You need to have some sort of aura as a manager when you're walking into that dressing room. I think Michael's slate is clean, and I think he would be more accepted by the playing group.
No, I think that's a completely valid point. Obviously, as you mentioned, Luke Shaw, for example, has been there through many managers, so he would completely remember the time under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. But just to come back to Carrick, I think obviously he has that aura, as you mentioned, but it just comes to me, it's not even about necessarily the presence, because I felt like Amram did actually have that presence. It just comes down to the tactical astuteness, and I think Carrick has proven himself at Middlesbrough. Of course, it's a completely different kettle of fish, but nonetheless, he does have that, sort of experience, so to speak. He's gone out there and had success post Manchester United, and I don't feel like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, as much as I love him, has had that.
Would you have preferred a permanent appointment, and if so, who?
I think for me personally, I would definitely not have preferred a permanent appointment. The reason being is because it's quite difficult to get the managers that you'd want mid-season. I know we got Ruben Amorim mid-season, but nonetheless, I think it's extremely important that this next appointment is the right person, and I don't think it should be rushed. Obviously, we'll get into Ineos shortly, but I feel like they probably made the right decision in terms of going for an interim and then reassessing in the summer, where more people will be available after the World Cup. We've seen rumours of Luis Enrique potentially not signing his contract. Obviously, that would be the pipe dream, but I still think Julian Nagelsmann post the World Cup could be an option as well.
Did you think it was very important for this interim manager to have a Man United stamp on him?
Absolutely not. I don't think that's relevant at all. I think, if I'm honest, and I don't know if other fans would agree with this, I'm actually quite sick to hear this DNA, Manchester United DNA. I've been a Man United fan for 30 years. I don't think it's relevant. Sir Alex Ferguson was a completely different entity, and I feel like we could somewhat living in the past and constantly trying to compare and find a Sir Alex Ferguson mould, and that is not going to happen. He's one in 10 million, so to speak. No one's ever going to be able to replicate what he did, regardless of who played for him. That is just not a thing. This United way myth needs to die, for me personally, for us to move forward. I think obviously there's some foundations such as playing the youth that are embedded within the culture of the club, and I completely agree with them being important going forward. But the sort of playing the United way, having United DNA, is absolutely irrelevant in my opinion. Get the best person to do the job. It's as simple as that. Look at other clubs around us, obviously Man City with Pep Guardiola, for example, they're doing a phenomenal job in terms of the structure, and they set you up for Pep Guardiola, not for someone to do Man United DNA. I don't think that's necessary at all.
There's a message on the bottom of the screen there from a fan called John, who says that Manchester United is an impossible job. That's one for you, Tim. Is it an impossible job?
No, it's a good job. It's a good job because it's been going so bad. It's a good job now to take over. I don't think they've got fantastic players. I really don't. I don't see any of these current players, even Bruno, who's the outstanding player, could have played for Man United in the past, and we're all stuck in the past. I can't help getting myself out of the teams that in my memory, I remember the superstars who played for Manchester United, but you're absolutely right. We have to forget about that. That's long gone. We have to clean the slate and start building a new Manchester United, because the old Man United is long gone. But we all keep relating to it because that's our history. That's how we remember it. United were great. They will be great again, but it's not anytime soon by the looks of it.
Hey, Usman, do you trust Ineos to get it right, whether it's now or the summer?
Absolutely not. I don't think Ineos have got enough flack, if I'm being quite thoroughly honest. I know it's not going to be popular to say on here, but the truth of the matter is, 2 seasons under Ineos. Last season we finished 15th. I saw you guys talking previously about, is this the worst season? I'd still say last season was worse, just because that absolute calamity that happened from Ineos. It's your first season, in charge of Manchester United to an extent, and you come in and Man United have a worst, finish in the 21st century as long as time began, and then you follow it up with this season, which is another car crash. A lot of people were clamouring for Amrin to get sacked in summer. Obviously, that's a different conversation now. You then sack him mid-season because he comes out and says he wants backing. I'm sorry, I'm sure, Tim, you're a manager yourself. It's quite evident that Manchester United needed players in this the January window, regardless of who the manager is. I was an Amrin fan by any stretch of the imagination. I actually thought it was the right decision to, get rid of him, so to speak. However, you have to have a contingency plan. That is an absolute disgrace from Ineos to not have a contingency plan and go into an FA Cup game with Fletcher, who's not really got much managerial credentials. I just think that's ridiculous planning, and you've got to point the finger at Ineos and the Glazers on that front. At the end of the day, they've let the fans down. It's as simple as that. You're not going to back Amrin, you sacked him, and you've basically not got as a manager for 2 games.
In your opinion, taking them forward, what is Ineos's job moving forward?
But honestly, it's hard to really say because the truth of the matter is the club is in an absolute shambles from top to bottom. And coming back to what I said, the first thing is having people in that actually know what they're doing. The fact that Wilcox, has come out and said the comments that he said the other day, again, Tim, you're a manager. If you heard your senior saying that, oh, I'm a coach at heart, that is the utter disrespect. You can't hire Amrim and then not give him the reign of the club. This is Manchester United Football Club. Why are we in a situation that somebody higher than Amrim is essentially giving him pointers and saying you can do X, Y, Z with the players? I just think it's ridiculous. And people like that, I don't know his credentials completely, and I can't sit here and say he's fit for the job. But you got to look at the people above and have that real structure. I hate to keep harping on about Man City because I can't stand them. But the truth of the matter is, before they got Pep Guardiola in, they had the structure set from top to bottom, which has made it extremely seamless for him to come in and slot in and do what he does. When Manchester United manager comes in, they don't have that. Pardon me, they don't have that. And it's very different for them to come in because it's a bit of a mess out in terms of structure. So to answer your question, they need to get the structure right, get the right people in the right places that know what they're actually doing, not people that think they're part-time coaches because they're quite clearly not.
And it is the Manchester derby.
Mikel Arteta's work at Arsenal is being viewed in an even brighter light after the recent coaching shakeups elsewhere. With Chelsea parting ways with Enzo Maresca and Manchester United moving on from Ruben Amorim, the contrast is hard to miss. Arsenal has kept moving forward under Arteta, giving him time through difficult stretches, and now seeing the payoff as the club pushes again in the Premier League title race. It also raises a bigger question about strategy. While Chelsea and United are changing direction again, Arteta has been in place for more than 6 years, outlasting a long list of managers across those two clubs in that span. That stability has become part of the story, and it was a major talking point on the Seeing Red podcast with Tom Canton and John Cross. Beyond reacting to Amorim's dismissal and breaking down wins over Aston Villa and Bournemouth, plus Manchester City's loss to Chelsea, the conversation kept returning to one core idea: structure. Not just who is the coach, but how much power that coach has, and whether the club is built to support a long-term project. Cross pointed to Arsenal as a rare example of patience turning into real strength. He argued that Arsenal's willingness to back Arteta through the messy early phases helped create the stable position they're in now, and that this kind of time and support investment is what can turn a club into something truly solid. Canton's response was sharp and honest. Arteta's arc, he said, has almost become a problem for other clubs, because it tempts them to keep coaches they probably shouldn't. But at the same time, it's still the best example of what can happen when you hire the right person and actually give them time. And that time wasn't smooth. The discussion highlighted how Arsenal could easily have pulled the plug early. 2 8th-place finishes, then 5th, missing out on the Champions League, and a Europa League semi-final exit to Unai Emery's Villarreal. Any of those moments could have pushed a club into panic mode. Instead, the argument is that Arsenal recognized the bigger reality. Arteta didn't have the resources to compete at the required level right away. The squad needed a rebuild. The roster needed to be refreshed. That's where the comparison to Chelsea and United becomes even more pointed. The podcast suggested that recruitment and decision-making structure are often what determine whether a coach survives. If signings don't land, results suffer. And if a coach doesn't have enough influence, or the club isn't aligned behind a clear plan, it becomes much easier for things to collapse. In other words, giving time only works if the coach is empowered to shape the team in a way that matches the vision. Cross also emphasized that Arteta's situation stood out because he pushed to be a true manager, not just a head coach. The idea is simple. Top coaches want a real say in the build, and they want the club to match what they were promised when they took the job. The discussion even pointed to how Arteta survived a low moment, like the home loss to Burnley, because the club stayed behind him. And in that period, with fan pressure affected by the COVID-era environment, Arsenal were able to hold their nerve instead of reacting emotionally. Meanwhile, the big unknowns now shift back to Chelsea and Manchester United. Who replaces Amorim? And how will the next chapter look at Chelsea? The answers may come sooner than people expect. But for Arsenal, the reality stays the same. They're stable, they're moving forward, and they're still in the title chase, while others are starting over again. And that contrast can shape how people judge every manager in the league. Because when two massive clubs hit the reset button again, it forces the same question Cross raised on the show. Is the quick switch actually fixing the problem, or just delaying the real work? The bigger takeaway from the discussion is that time isn't a magic solution by itself. It only becomes valuable when the club's structure supports the plan, and when the coach has the influence to push the squad in the direction he believes it needs to go. That's why the distinction between head coach and manager kept coming up. The podcast point is that if a coach is expected to own the results, he usually wants a meaningful say in the decisions that shape those results. And if he doesn't get that, patience alone won't save him. That's also where Arteta's early struggles get reframed. Those finishes and setbacks could have become a reason to panic. Instead, they became evidence of why alignment matters, because Arsenal chose to treat them as part of a build, not a final verdict. And once the squad was reshaped the way the club believed it needed to be, the results started to reflect that long-term approach. So the repercussions aren't just about Arsenal looking stable, it's about how stability changes your margin for error. When you don't reset every year, you're not constantly starting from zero. You're building on decisions, learning from setbacks, and keeping a clearer identity. For Chelsea and Manchester United, the immediate consequence is obvious. They're changing direction again, which means the next appointment carries even more weight. Because every new coach isn't just judged on results. He's judged on whether the club is finally giving him the structure and authority that the role demands. That's why the question at the end matters so much. Who will replace Amorim, and how will Liam Rosenior do at Chelsea? Because those answers will test the exact theme the show kept returning to: time, support, structure, and control. And for Arsenal, it's a different kind of pressure. Stability doesn't guarantee trophies, but it does keep you in the fight longer. And right now, while others restart, Arsenal get to stay focused on what they're already doing, chasing the Premier League title.